there was a moment where everything spilled over and I just couldn't take it anymore. I was tired of it, and I wasn't even sad. I was like disappointed and exhausted of noticing that this person's default was no longer joyous.
I experienced self-love for the first time in my life. It was just a very cathartic experience.
Today's episode is a special double edition of Human Journeys. Max de Rosnay shares his story of addiction and recovery, while Human Journeys host Jason Najum opens up about his experiences with anxiety and psychedelics. Two different journeys with a shared path towards healing. Welcome to the Human Journeys podcast by States of Mind. Real people, real stories, life-changing conversations of personal growth and healing. Max, welcome to the Human Journeys podcast.
Thank you, Jason. Welcome to the Human Journey podcast.
Yes, we're doing something slightly different. We've both hosted the Human Journeys podcast, and we're going to do, I guess, a dual combination version of the podcast, both of us sharing our stories. We do work together. So this is, I was thinking, most colleagues go for a beer to get to know each other, but we're recording a podcast for the world to see, talking about our deepest, darkest secrets. So good team bonding exercise.
It's fantastic team bonding. I'm very excited, Jason.
Yeah.
Excited to hear your story, who you truly are.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the Human Journeys podcast is, the personal stories behind psychedelics. We all come to this space generally. There's a reason for it. Not most people aren't in it for the money. There's either there's a handful, but generally there's a motive, either a personal motivation or an altruistic motivation, or someone in your life has been affected by psychedelics. So there's a reason we're here generally. And I think we're here to share our stories of how we got here. I could go first.
You can go first, but maybe let's hear a bit about you and before psychedelics. Maybe I'd be interested in that.
Yeah. Well, picture it, 1978. Imagine, right? Just aged myself. I'm from Montreal. Mixed heritage family. Quasi raised by Holocaust survivors. My mother's side were Polish Jews, and my parents were divorced really, really young. So I grew up in my grandparents' house really a lot in Canada, and so most of my childhood memories are in my grandparents' house, and they were proper Holocaust survivors. So there was that as some sort of background coloring. Not too traumatic, but if you dig deeper, I could see how it directed or colored how my personality got shaped slightly, which obviously your environment does and your family does. And it wasn't anything too severe. My mom had more direct, maybe survivor trauma. But I do see, and this ties into how I ended up getting here, how that background, my family background of some sort of background tension and it led to things that I had to work out, and that eventually led to my human journey story and getting to psychedelics. So yeah, suburban life in Montreal, great. Canada's beautiful. Life was great. I was an athlete, and then discovered and fed my writerly side and made a career switch in my 30s to left the business world behind and focus on building up my writer's career. And then that was going successfully. And then I guess we could say in about 2019, 2020, I started to feel like the background mental health status it reached a point where I could no longer just say, okay, things aren't great, but they're all right. That something kind of needed to be done.
Was it something that you sort of thought about a lot before 2020, sort of mental health, or did you look at other avenues to psychotherapy, therapy, or anything, meditation?
So yes and no. I'd never done traditional therapy. Maybe I did a couples therapy session once with an ex, but I had, added yoga to my life. I'd already gone to India. Wasn't full-time yogi, but I had started to build a kind of like holistic practice slightly. It wasn't super intentional, but I was starting to add those things. So I had a kind of mindfulness experience. I had gone to a meditation retreat in India, and I had practiced yoga. So I was starting to like build these tools out, and despite that, things were starting to like build at the edges, and and somehow mindfulness and self-awareness can make it can get you to seeking an answer and a solution quicker, but it can almost make things more difficult. Like, I don't know, like ignorance is bliss. And in my case, my mental health issues weren't like flashing red lights, and the alarm wasn't ringing, but I noticed this accumulation, and I noticed what my default setting was, because I had, I guess, practice looking inwards. And what I would notice is that my default setting was no longer joy, and my default setting was slightly anxious and slightly negative, and sometimes more than slightly. And I wrote an article about it for States of Mind, actually, where I shared it. And there was a moment where it kind of everything spilled over, and I just couldn't take it anymore. That, like, I was tired of it, and I wasn't even sad. I was like disappointed and exhausted of noticing that this person's default was no longer joyous. And I know this other version of myself, this kid, this person, and I know how amazing he is, and I know the shining light that, that's in him, that was in him. And then I would notice for days and months and years that was no longer like my default setting. And I was so, it was a shame that was no longer me. And I remember there was this moment where I had gone out to the movie theater with some friends, and I'm watching the movie, and my mind just kept going to its shitty anxiety habits of thought. And I kept seeing my mind going there. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? You can't even sit and watch a movie. And then I got home, and I sat on my couch, and I cried because I was so fucking tired of it. And that was the moment where I'm like, okay. Now you can tell yourself it's not so bad. Mm-hmm. This is minor. Things are fine. It's just a little bit of background anxiety. And then I'm like, no, this is not. And that started, that moment there, where I sat on my couch alone in my apartment, like ugly crying out of like exhaustion, was like set off the chain of events that led us here today.
Thank you for sharing that, Jason.
That's my brief intro. Dive right in.
Yeah, as in, like, do I give my intro now, or do you want to go maybe into your psychedelic experience?
Whatever you feel like.
I think let's
tell me your.
I can just give you my origin story.
Yeah.
I mean, so I was brought up in London, born and bred, southwest London, place called Fulham. Quite posh area now.
Fulham has a club.
Yeah, it's my favorite club. It's Fulham through and through, London's originals. So we're actually the first professional London team, which is a good fact to know for all the football heads out there. So yeah, from there, and my parents split up when I was quite young. So when I was around 4, they split up. And actually, one of my sort of first memories, or a memory that I can recall, it's actually the moment. I think it's what it was, and I did sort of ask my father if this was a true memory, and he did corroborate and say it was. But it was essentially him leaving the house for, I guess, the last time that we're sort of family units, And I remember going to the front door and basically like crying when he was leaving. So I remember that. And so anyway, they split up, and then
What age is that?
4. I was 4, 4, 5, something
I have
like that.
so very similar.
You as well, yeah.
Exactly the
Yeah.
same. Exactly the same.
Yeah.
I remember. I was 6 and my sister was 4. And I have like one of my first memories is it's not banging at the door. It's quite Hollywood dramatic, but but it's amazing, right? And these things, mine was just slightly different, and they were like sitting me down to tell me, to break the news, and my sister wasn't in the room. They're like, "We're telling you because you're older," and like I think my dad was like on one knee with like a hand on my shoulder, and my mom and my dad were like breaking the news to me. And that's like one of my first memories.
Does it bring up is it a feeling, or like do you remember how you felt in that moment?
It's a feeling that's come up often through life of behind that is probably some serious divorce trauma that you felt, and that's there. That's kind of nameless. But this other feeling of like a heavy burden and responsibility. Like the weight of it, because I think it was also delivered in a way of like managing it for my sister wasn't there, and I think I was already thinking about how I'm going to tell my sister. So like a heavy burden was also there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, but yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, please. It's I'm not glad, but it's nice that you can relate these kind of experiences with others, right?
Mm-hmm. So you're banging at the door.
Banging at the door. So anyway, my parents split up. So I'm kind of spending time with my mum, time with my dad's. But to not go too much into the weeds of my family, like that was not the first divorce. That was the first of many. So my father gets. Well, I don't know who gets married first, second time, but anyway, both my parents get married again. I have a step family, stepfather, stepmom, and they divorce again years later.
Both,
yeah, both.
Nice.
And then they got married again. So they're both on their sort of third partners.
Third time's a charm?
Say that again?
Third time's a charm?
Third time's, yeah, well...
No, you don't have to.
Yeah,
okay,
I'm not going to go into... Yeah, I'm not going to weed with this, but no. And so just to kind of give you a snapshot, like just my upbringing had a lot of goods. I love my family, I love my parents, I love my siblings, step siblings, or half siblings. I love everyone. I've got a very good relationship with everyone in my family, I'd say, nowadays. So I'm very grateful for that. But it was just very chaotic. There was a lot of changing and psychological abuse from different people, and so it wasn't easy growing up. It was just I never felt safe. And I think that's a big part of the reason why, sort of in my teenage years, but even actually before that, I sort of started misbehaving quite a lot at school. Because before that, I was quite a gentle, kind kid. Like I didn't really bother people. Quite shy, very shy even. And then from the age of 10, 11, 12, I just sort of had this need to, please people and be the center of attention. And I knew I could do that by, being the joker and causing mischief and this kind of thing in school. So that's kind of how my sort of behavior started. But then that sort of manifested in drugs. And like a lot of people in London, at least within my circles, you start experimenting with drugs quite young. You really do. So, cannabis at 12, 13, drinking just before that. And that honestly is quite normal. If you ask a lot of London kids, I think I smoked weed until I was college. So we were young. Yeah, we were young, and I actually remember the first time I had a spliff. Like I had with a friend of mine, and we kind of had this weed, and we're trying to roll it up in this thing, and we couldn't really roll, but we had this kind of really loose spliff, and we tried smoking it, but it wasn't even the effects that got me. It was more just like the thing of doing something that was like taboo, or like, and that's why I got my rush, So that's kind of my segue into drugs, and slowly, well, not slowly but surely, but actually quite quickly, it's accelerated, and I got to a point where I was completely addicted to drugs, physically, mentally. Progressed quite quickly. So it was kind of, cannabis. And then, it's 13, 14, started going to, raves and experimenting with MDMA, ketamine, these kind of things. And sort of at, methadone, all these things. And so, by 14, 15, I was doing a lot of ketamine, doing a lot of other drugs.
Then it was shock, like
yeah, no, but it's to me, honestly, it feels like this. It felt normal because it wasn't just me. I was doing it with a lot of my friends, and from different schools as well, and so it felt normal. But then when I think about it, and I see, I have younger siblings, and I look at them when they were like 13, 14, 15. I was like, I was doing that shit at your age. Like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
Like, they're kids.
Yeah,
they're kids.
So are you.
Yeah, no, so was I. It's like, no wonder my brain is like so fried. Like honestly. So, and then it was, benzos, opiates, and then, in the end it was, heroin and crack at the very end. But this was that sort of 17, 18. I got clean very young. I probably won't go into the whole war stories now, but, big family intervention, because it just became apparent that I had a big problem with drugs. I hid it for a long time, as well as I could, but... when watches and jewelry and I don't know, clothes, designer bags go missing in households, people begin to look at the skinny kid and who's got behavioral issues and like, okay, well, maybe it's Max, and that became apparent. And family intervention, end up in a rehab at 17, and that was kind of like my journey into recovery, basically at 17. And this was 12 years ago now, essentially. But we can get more into that and how where psychedelics came into that. But that's kind of my sort of childhood and adolescence. And so really the last 12 years I've essentially been in recovery. So actually all of my adult life I've mostly been clean for the most part. So I've kind of just had two lives really.
So you see it that way?
Yeah, I do. I really do. Yeah, I really do. It's just. Not two lives. I mean, actually, the psychedelics gave a different dimension to my life, which we'll get into. But yeah, the person I was when I was, an adolescent, using drugs, abusing drugs, to who I am now. There's this like chalk and cheese. You can't compare really.
So just a little pause there. Chalk and cheese?
Chalk and cheese, that's it.
Yeah. I love speaking to the Brits.
Yeah, Americans or North Americans usually say that, yeah.
Makes me so excited. As a writer, whenever I think I just know the English language and I'm done with it, and then I speak to people from the UK, and then I'm like, thank you for blessing me with a new discovery.
There's a lot of depth to the English language. There's a lot of depth.
All right. Yeah. Two lives, yeah. Yeah, sometimes when I don't know how you look back on that other chapter. Is there any shame left?
Sometimes, not really, because I've done a lot of work on that through 12-step based programs. Done a lot of, sort of looking at my parts in things and making amends to people that I've harmed and so these kind of things but sometimes these memories come up again through interactions with family or friends, and like the feeling of shame does come up sometimes. But for the most part, I wouldn't say so. No, like I've made my peace with it personally. I have, and I believe most people that I've harmed through that process have. Not everyone, but most people have. So. Yeah, it can come up in small ways, but not what it was when I first, got clean. Like I was crippled by shame when I first got clean. Crippled. I didn't know what to do with it. And even before I got clean, just like generally, like I hated myself and hated what I was doing, and for me the solution was to use more drugs. That was it. Like, that was the solution always. So, but nowadays not so much. No.
Yeah, maybe the fact that you were so young gave you minimized the opportunities for shameful. Like, I don't know, as an adult, you'll have more complex relationships or more opportunities for
destruction.
For destruction.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I got lucky that I was able to sort of initially get clean at a young age. Like it this could have gone on for longer. It was either like it could have gone on for longer, or I was going to die quite young. It was really one of those, like, I can't say. I've got people who were, my age back then who died. A lot of my friends in recovery died through this, either through overdoses or suicide. This is kind of usually the way, the avenues that are at sort of our disposal when we're in addiction. It's that, like, it's death institutions or jails or whatever. So
it's interesting, the contrast. So I don't know anyone who's officially an addict, or I dated a girl who was from the South in the U.S., and she knew like 4 of her friends had died of an overdose, and it was like completely foreign to me. And so our origin stories and reasons are maybe different, but we both ended up in the similar place, trying to do similar things. So I was just kind of playing with that contrast. I wonder, if at its root it's the same kind of problems. Like I see my problems as trying to fix bad habits that formed over time. And in my case, they didn't manifest in extreme ways. My personality maybe lent itself to like moderation and control. And I think even that goes back to that moment of my father giving me the responsibility to take care of my sister. And I see how that's shaped me, and how it's like made me responsible. Even as I'm totally irresponsible, I'm still responsible. And I think that like kept me in control, making sure things were going in the right direction, so that my issues were kind of like pushed kind of to the periphery, and they just became like manageable issues, and my life was going ahead in a more or less steady way, and I was able to. So that's kind of how it manifested for me, and then for you, it manifested in me in a more outwardly or more extreme way. I was just playing with how they're similar, and at their root, I don't know. Like we have a very similar origin story. Children of divorce.
Yeah.
Our past just kind of like went a little bit differently, and then came back in. Like, what would you say? What was the cause of the addiction? Like, was it escapism? You was at such a young age. I wonder, was it just a chemical? Like, you just stumbled upon the wrong group of friends, and someone offered it to you, and then all of a sudden you developed a chemical addiction. I mean,
you can never. People say it's nature or nurture. I mean, I think that it's multifaceted is the answer. Like, I mean, I can only share from my experience. I think drugs, sort of gave me a way to kind of feel okay with myself. I just didn't like who I was and didn't like my environment, and it gave me a way out. So some form of escapism, and it just kind of made me feel all right. Like, it was just kind of the solution at the time. Like, it was like, okay, I have a negative feeling, or I wasn't even thinking that I have a negative feeling I'm going to use. It's more like that's just kind of what I was compelled to do, was to use, because I felt shit all the time, basically. So, they say it's, the drugs are only a symptom of whatever we're dealing with. It's the kind of deeper, maybe depression, or I don't know what. All I know is that at that time, it felt like the solution. Like I thought I found the medicine. Like, the first time I used different drugs, I was like, wow, this is it. Like, I can, if this is what I can do for the rest of my life, I'm sorted. But people like me just can't use these things like normal people. It becomes compulsive, and I harm myself and other people in the process. That's the problem. Like, if I didn't do that, I'd still be using. But the reality is that I would just harm myself and other people.
And was it an effort? Was there an effort to get past your ego? And you said people like me, and is that why I mean, I'm kind of addiction ignorant, but I'm part of the steps is you kind of like declare yourself an addict, like I'm so and so. Is that an important part of the process? Is acknowledging?
Yeah, accepting that you have a problem. I mean, it's really the only thing you need to, go to meetings is kind of accept that you have a problem. Or in other words, accept that you're an addict. People have issues with that term addict, but it's that, just at least just simply accept that I have a very problematic relationship with certain drugs. My thinking is for lack of a better word, fucked up if I don't find other solutions to deal with that. I can very quickly get into sort of compulsion and resentment and obsessive thinking that can be really destructive. That's the answer. When I say that, I mean that. And my sort of outlet for that were drugs. But it can be other things. It could be sex. It could be gambling, whatever behavioral process addiction. Doesn't matter what it is. It's just anything to kind of soothe that kind of hole. And that's how I described it when I first got clean. It felt like a real big like hole in my stomach that just needed to be filled, and drugs filled that. And so that's what they did. But with psychedelics, it's different. Maybe we can talk about that. I mean, I'd be interested maybe to hear why psychedelics for you. Like how did you land on, I don't know, was it psilocybin? Like what was the journey to psychedelics? Like why did you?
My gateway drug was microdosing psilocybin mushrooms. So after that evening in my living room, which we'll call that that was the tipping point, I went to my sister, and who's through all the things we've been through is my best friend, and I'm getting a little emotional even just saying that. And I told her that I needed to do something, and we had a real talk. And I'm like, so it's not good over here. And she suggested I go on medication because she had been on anti-anxiety meds for several years after her first child. She had some postpartum, and it just led to some stuff. And I said, I hesitated, and I said, let me try something else first. And this was in 2019 or 2019. Microdosing was not as popular as it is today, but I had heard of it. I'd been to Burning Man. I knew a bit about the psychedelic world, enough to know that it was something that I could try, but there was no home delivery microdosing kits yet. So I decided to add, like that winter, there was a lot of things going on with my family and some tough times, but I decided to do some work on myself. So I went to yoga more that winter. I meditated a bit more, and I started to microdose. And I added that to my, mental health practice, this attempt to snap out of wherever I was. So I started microdosing. And then along with all the other work you do, like there's no silver bullet, there's nothing fixes anything overnight. But the combination of like mindfulness, awareness, just like being aware of the topic of mindfulness. And I had an app. I was practicing very loosely and not as much as I should have, but I understood how to like check in with myself. And I started to notice that what I was doing was starting to work. And I think that microdosing was part of it. And what I've noticed with psychedelics for me is that I'm better able to access the present moment. And I'm better able to like sit here with you instead of sitting here through a filter of all my bullshit with you and trying to connect, to speak with you. Like I'm better able to be here, like here, and not like in here. And that's always how I describes my experience of the world and my mental health problems is like getting, like, what is anxiety if not getting caught and taken away by a thought pattern for an hour or for a minute? You're just like, where was I? I was doing life, but I was doing it through while this thing was happening. And that's what I'm still trying to fix, always trying to fix. And I find that psychedelics facilitate being here a bit more. And that was my beginning. Psychedelics made me realize that made me remember what it's like to be here and not in here, along with mindfulness and yoga and Buddhist practice and all that. But yeah.
So plant was seeded with microdosing.
Yeah.
Did you then decide to do a bigger dose, or was that something that was of interest to you, or would you have been fine with just the microdosing? Like, was that?
No, because work still needed to happen. But I did get the seed planted that, okay, this is something that's working. And then that once you open up the doors, you start to pay attention to this space, you start to learn about it. And I got more and more comfortable with the subject. Microdosing is a good starter kit also. Like I would recommend it to people, especially if you're apprehensive and you don't have a psychonaut or, drug-friendly background. Microdosing can, ease the tension around entering psychedelics, and you get comfortable with the thing and you start to have a relationship with it. And that's kind of what happened slowly over the years. I didn't chase it, but then, opportunities presented themselves to have bigger experiences, and I had a bigger psilocybin. I gave myself I did 1 year on New Year's. I just didn't go out and I stayed home by myself, and I gave myself a psilocybin ceremony.
Wow.
Yeah, alone in my apartment. And that was interesting. And went to Colombia in my travels, did my first ayahuasca ceremony. And slowly over the years, I tried not to, I resisted the urge to chase the bigger, to go after the bigger things. My personality was a bit more slow and steady. And then slowly over time, bigger experiences happened, and continued to learn. And learning about the space, I ended up working in the space. And so a lot of blessings happened through psychedelics. And I do feel that I can get much quicker back to here instead of in here. Mm-hmm. Even talking about it is reinforcing the learning you have. These conversations are important to remember what we learned.
Yeah. Did you get any other sort of maybe different messages from the bigger doses? Any big shifts, perspective or spirituality or?
I've never had. I think a lot. I needed to kind of peel away my control, and I think control is still there. So basically all of my big psychedelic experiences have been me just battling through myself to let myself have the experience. I've basically never had a big spiritual experience, and I've done ayahuasca twice, and I've done bigger psilocybin ceremonies. And it's always like, I think I'm just still stripping away at the internal controls. Like my last ayahuasca ceremony was just purging. I didn't do anything else. I was just shitting myself for 5 hours, and just so like, yeah. and I think that's just because that's what needed to get out of the way.
Yeah.
Physically and metaphorically, and
dismantling the armor.
Yeah,
slowly.
Yeah, and and they say that the medicine will give you what you need, and I get that's what I needed, is to just let myself strip away the protections and the controls, and I think that's working. I do feel like the next time a bigger experience happens, I'm gonna be go in much lighter. And I think maybe some deeper stuff can happen. But does it need to? Sometimes doesn't need to, right?
It doesn't. I think people have these sometimes unrealistic expectations of what psychedelics can do. And I think, at least this is my opinion, if you go into these ceremonies or contexts where you're going to take ayahuasca or psilocybin or big dose and you think you're going to have this huge spiritual experience, it might not happen. It might, you just don't know what's going to happen.
Maybe it doesn't need to happen.
Exactly. Maybe it doesn't need to happen. You don't need that. But yeah,
What was yours?
Mine was it was first with psilocybin,
Mm.
and to give you a bit of context, like I get clean, sort of rebuild my life, go to university, or do all the good stuff that young people should do, and
So clean through college.
clean college. Yeah, I mean, I had a relapse, which I'll get to, which is why I started taking psychedelics.
Mm.
Partly why I get clean, and I'd get 6 months clean, and I'd relapse, a year clean, relapse, and I went to college in Sydney, Australia, and I had almost 3 years clean at this time, but I got back into bad habits. Wasn't going to meetings, just like was isolating a lot more, acting out in different ways, and ended up relapsing. Just like, just to give you a sort of insight into the kind of thinking I have sometimes. I was kind of, as I was acting out, and I was like, okay, like I'm in college, I want to make a bit more money, like I need a bit more money, and instead of getting like a normal kind of like job at a cafe or whatever, I was like, I'm going to start selling drugs. I was like, I'm going to start selling ketamine.
As a recovering addict should.
Yeah, as a recovering addict should do. I'm going to start selling ketamine. I was, I sort of still had, like, I basically created a new account on the dark web. And I was like, oof, God, maybe I should start selling some heroin as well. Like, they have the China White in Australia. I've never tried China White, so let's kind of let's sort of start buying that. Anyway, so I buy all of this ketamine, this sort of, China White heroin from, Southeast. Most of the heroin in Australia comes from Southeast Asia, so it's different to the heroin you get in like Europe, which comes from Afghanistan or the States.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, I was ketamine and heroin, and it comes to the parcel comes at my dorm, and take the parcel, open it up, and I'm like, okay, well, I've got to know if it's good stuff, right? So I take a key. You can snort this kind of heroin. I snort it. And that was it. That was me gone for 3 weeks, man. That was me for 3 weeks.
Holy
I was
shit.
just gone. I've very, like, really zero, like, very little recollection of the 3 weeks. But anyway, I wake up one morning alone in my dorm, and this voice comes into my head, and it basically says, like, don't use today. Don't use. I've never had it before in my life. Never. It used to be like an intervention or something, and voice comes, and I get up and I take the drugs from my table, put them in the toilet, flush them, go downstairs, have a cigarette, and even then, like, the cigarettes tasted so disgusting, so I could feel like the cancer like permeating through my body. And since then, I haven't smoked cigarettes that day. And I get clean again, and I was sort of maybe 4 or 5 months clean then, and I was still kind of struggling mentally. Like, I was clean, but they call dry drunk, or like you're clean, but you're not living a spiritual life. You're just like same sort of mental issues and thought processes, still very toxic. And I kind of had that. And actually, it was a friend of mine who's not in recovery, who, for some reason, I forget why, but he mentioned psychedelics. He was like, "Have you ever considered that psychedelics could work for you?" And I was like, well, no, I'm an addict. I can't use a chemical to, like, deal with my chemical addiction. And anyway, he put me on to something. I forget what it was. And like, it was through Reddit, a subreddit, I came across Psychedelics in Recovery, which is a group of recovering addicts or alcoholics, or like me, who use psychedelics as part of their spiritual program, as part of their recovery. And I kind of read this, and I was looking at, the empirical studies, compass pathways. I was just thinking, wow, there's like a lot of research going into this. I was like, this is really interesting. Join a few PIR meetings, psychedelic recovery meetings, and kind of talk to these people who are using psychedelics. I'm like, wow, they're actually like pretty normal. Like, they seem really serene. And anyway, I decided to take psilocybin. And the main reason I wanted to try is because, as I mentioned, I was, I'd relapse. I didn't have this kind of spiritual experience that seemed to be promised to me through the steps, which you can get without, I'm not saying, so you can get there without psychedelics or whatever. But for me, I struggled coming to terms with the idea that there was a spiritual solution to whatever I was dealing with. And I thought, okay, like, listening to these people in PIR, I was like, maybe this could be a good way to, I don't know, get a different perspective, like try something new that might help me. And, with the advice of many people, I did psilocybin on my own, had someone's number in case something went bad. And yeah, it's things fundamentally changed from that moment. Like it was a psilocybin, 3-4 grams of this species called psilocybin subaruginosa. They grow, they're endemic to Australia, so they're actually growing literally within 100 meters of where I was living. Like you find them everywhere. It was amazing. And something changed, like something flicked. Like it was one, I experienced self-love for the first time in my life. Like I was like, it's almost like something inside of me was hugging me. And, like with the drug like heroin, for instance, or opiates, you have that feeling, it's not the same feeling, but you have that feeling of like you have a warm hug from someone you really love. That's kind of how it feels. With the psychedelics, it was that, but I felt love for myself and for other people. And I just had this sort of connection to the universe or to nature. Like I remember the next day I went outside and I was looking at these trees and I was like, oh my God, trees are just so beautiful. Like plants and people and ants and ants and spiders. Like, I don't kill fucking spiders anymore. Because I feel bad. I feel genuinely bad. I can't do it. It was kind of like, if you take a picture on a Polaroid and the picture comes out and you're kind of like slowly but surely, the image gets color, and that's kind of what the experience was like. My psychedelics was like things were revealed to me, which I don't think I would have got had I not had that experience. It was just a very cathartic experience, and obviously the fear before that was, will this experience or the fact that I am using a drug, will that make me want to use other drugs? That was a genuine fear. I knew I was taking a risk, but it had the opposite effect. I was like, man, like I want to work the steps again. I really want to work the steps. I want to go back to meetings. And I did that. And I kind of just basically worked the steps in conjunction with psychedelics. And I just had these very powerful experiences with psychedelics, but also while working the steps. And a lot of things were revealed to me. Sort of acceptance for who I was, and by extension could accept other people for who they were. Just like I had a lot more love to give, because before that I had very little love to give, very self-centered, a lot of hate, even in recovery, a lot of hate. Like I had these, I'd have these mad political beliefs because I just wanted to identify or belong to something. That's fundamentally what I wanted, to, like belong to something. But psychedelics gave me something. I felt like I belonged to the universe in a very sort of like non-cringy way. That's really how it felt. Like I really. So it was
like experiential belonging. Like you were experiencing the world, and you felt you saw the world for the first time.
Really, yeah, gently, like at a much like deeper level. Like it was. Yeah, it's hard to describe, as with these. It's hard to describe, but it just really felt like a sort of switch was flicked, and since then my perspective on life has changed immensely, just from that one experience. Which is I find that fascinating. Yeah. I really find that so fascinating that one experience can do that. Of course, I also count myself lucky because other people have done that and maybe have had bad experiences, right? So, what I say, it's still taboo subject within recovery circles to use psychedelics for good and bad reasons. Like like for some people, using psychedelics is not the right thing to do. It just isn't. Don't need to go into details why, but for me, it was the right thing to do. I can say that honestly. So yeah.
Yes. I'm just trying to imagine what it felt for you. I mean, you're saying for the first time to feel self-love, the first time to see the world through a loving or what there was relief.
It's relief and like. Yeah, I think that also like an acceptance that like, also that I don't know, like it's acceptance that life is what it is, kind of thing, and I can't change much. Like it's weird. It's weird to describe it, like a real acceptance of like life and not trying to fight everything, and being better, just accepting people as they are, people and things and situations, and just kind of have this like I guess this belief or this faith that like things will be okay no matter what. Of course, I don't always operate like that. Like, you know, if other areas of my life are stressful, work, relationships, I can go back into that thing of like trying to control outcomes and whatever. But I can always go back to that experience and be like, oh, like, you know what, like I don't have to overcomplicate things so much, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, even just talking about it now, is it like a reinforcement mechanism? Like you can feel that moment again?
I can feel my body.
Yeah.
I can feel my body. It's just that feeling and like, but it's kind of like this kind of love. And I think that's what they call in you know, in the big book or in mostly AMEs, they call it God consciousness. It's kind of this like this, and just there's this love coming out and like, yeah. It's hard to, it's like a feeling I have. I don't always have it, obviously. I wish I did, but I just don't, because life takes over. But also, you know, cognizant of the fact that, you know, I'm also very, privileged. Like I was lucky enough to be in a situation where I could have that experience. And, you know, like I was in a situation where, you know, there's a war in my country, or, it's, I'm also accept that like I could have this experience because I was privileged, for sure. But very grateful that I could have it. And I could use it in my life now, you know.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you're privileged, but also, you know, take credit for you did some work to get yourself there. I mean, you got yourself clean. Like that moment of insight came without, like when you got clean and you tossed all your stuff, and that was an internal moment of insight that came just from you. So you deserved it. You deserve the privilege.
See, I mean, I think a lot of it's luck as well. That's also a thing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is luck.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of, as we know, there's a lot of people who try psychedelics or try to get clean or try to, you know, whatever, haven't got there for whatever reason, have died or haven't, or just in that continuous cycle of despair and, you know, mental health disorders or what, you know, whatever it might be. Like, so I think a lot of it is luck and situations and, you know, sliding door moments. I really do believe that. That's just my belief.
No, that's good.
I can't, like, it doesn't feel right for me to take credit. Like I want to say thank you. I appreciate that genuinely, but I also, it's hard for me to take credit for this. I think a lot of it is luck. I do.
Humility is good.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do. So I don't know how like, do you feel like, do you think like you came to psychedelics by luck, or like what was the?
I think it's I understand, you know, the free will versus not debate we can get, you know, how and why do things happen, but I think that I put myself, my personality, my view of the world, being slightly open to things, even if maybe people in my environment weren't, being an adventurous person. You know, I've been living nomadically around the world for 10 years. Like, one of the reasons I probably was able to be open to psychedelics as a possibility before most people were in my circles was because I'd put myself in these different situations and I was open to the world and I had an adventurous spirit. And even though my childhood did instill some traumas in me that I had to get over, it also did instill some personality traits that made me feel confident enough to go out into the world with a measure of internal security and a sense of security. So like, you know, our paths are, you know, we contain multitudes, and our traumas even have blessings. And
for sure. I mean, it's on that point, like I remember when I first got clean in meetings, people would often say, they'd say like, you know, I'm so grateful to be an addict. And I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, how? But now I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And I'm so, like, I'm just so grateful for everything that's happened to me to this point now, because I can honestly say I'm proud of the person I am. Genuinely, I can say that. I can really say that. I'm proud of the person I am. I love the people that are in my life. I love my life. I genuinely do. And I think I do because of the experience I had and things I went through and things I worked on and all my experiences, they formed the person I am. And I'm just ultimately grateful to be alive. Who knows for how long, but just for today, I'm very grateful to be alive, to be here with you speaking.
Yeah.
Genuinely, I really feel that. But of course, these things can change also. Like, there could be a traumatic event that happens tomorrow. Who knows? Like, I try to take things day by day. That's kind of been my, you shared a mantra before, or a kind of mantra before we entered the room. Like, a mantra that was always, well, from a very early stage of my recovery, that was always, put on me was, a day at a time. And for me, that really is the heart of it, a day at a time. It just simplifies, for me at least, simplifies everything. Because the moment I think too far ahead, I get anxious or...
For me, it's a moment at a time.
Yeah.
My paths with psychedelics has kind of been, I've done a little bit of Buddhist studying, a little bit of mindfulness studying, and I think they really go, for me, they go really hand in hand. The day at a time, the moment at a time, the ability that psychedelics can bring you to the present moment, and Buddhist or meditative teachings are also about coming back to the present moment, And I find, for me, this is how I always see psychedelics and how I kind of see everything. Even how you said your moment of kind of revelation after your first time with psilocybin. What I was thinking is that you're able to love the tree you were looking at because you were seeing it. Actually seeing it instead of seeing it through all of our garbage.
Yeah.
And for me, maybe the root solutions to our things were quite similar. Like I felt better because I was experiencing the world without my anxious thought filter. I was just, oh my God. I remember the first time after my first ayahuasca experience, I didn't really have a psychedelic experience. I just kind of purged. Actually, it's a funny psychedelic story. I went to an ayahuasca ceremony in Colombia, up in the mountains, and we went to see a shaman, and we were at the curadero's house, and everyone's around the fire, and everyone's ayahuasca-ing, except me. Like, one girl needed, she was having an exorcism. They had to tie her down. Everyone's going out, and I'm just sitting there, waiting. Nothing is happening. And then I'm lying down after 2 hours, and they kept coming up to me and nothing's happening. I'm like, zero. And my internal controls were strong. I don't know, they got the dosing wrong. I'm just lying. And then after 2 hours, my stomach starts to hurt, and they're like, why don't you go under the tree? I'm like, man, I'm under this tree, no spiritual, no psychedelic experience, and I'm just having stomach pains. And I'm like, ayahuasca sucks. And I'm just lying down under the tree. But then finally, I purged. And when you purge on ayahuasca, you're okay. And then this moment of clarity, and I just saw the world quiet. It was maybe the first time in years and decades in my life, just saw the world, experiencing it, looking, without the chatter that was causing me so much suffering. And for me, it didn't manifest in joyous love. It was just, wow, quiet, just experiencing the world. And I can still remember that experience. And I wonder if yours was just some other modified version of that, where you were experiencing the world in a real way, removed from all of our stuff, and you filled it in with some self-love, and that that was the way your coloring of it. But I think at its core, psychedelics allow us to experience the world in a more pure way, without our shit and filtering through it.
Partly, and I think also just allowing us to see things differently. It's like the shift in perspectives which I get on psychedelics are crazy. Like looking at things from other people's perspectives, or interactions I've had, or why they are this way. I'm like, I can really put myself, at least to the best of my abilities, in their shoes, and it just makes me kind of sort of build compassion for them and empathy and all these kind of things. And sort of what you shared with the ayahuasca, I had also a similar experience actually quite recently, also in Colombia, with ayahuasca. Wonder if we went to the same place. And I had my second night ceremony was terrible. Like also purging, shitting. I think I lost about 10 kilos that whole night. It was 6 days. And I got to a point where I was just feeling, so sick the whole night. Went back to my cabin, sort of after the ceremony kind of officially ends, and I was just lying there, and I thought at one point I was dying. I said to my girlfriend, like, I feel like I'm dying. I was kind of on my phone. I was like, I could hardly hold my phone in my hand. But I got to a point where I was so tired, I couldn't think anymore. And then I could feel something moving in me. And suddenly I just experienced this like vitality for life. Like I've never had it like that before. Like just this like gratitude to be alive. And I put my headphones on, I put some music, and I don't think I'd ever been so happy ever in my life in that moment. Just like hearing the music, feeling my body, just feeling all these emotions in my bodies. And I don't know, it was kind of this, this experience which I think will stay for me for quite a long time, because I don't know what it is with you, your sort of relationship with psychedelics now, why you use them. Like for me, it's kind of like a reset. I use it as a reset. When I feel the moment is right to take them, I'll take them. Maybe to work through something specific, but it's usually to just kind of also remind myself of like what is important to me in my life. And usually it's friends, family, relationships. I don't know, like this sort of self-love, or this love I can give out to people. Just like focus on the fundamental things that I think are important to me in my life. And psychedelics can help me do that, access those kind of states of consciousness. And I had that with ayahuasca. Just like it just reminded me of how amazing it can be to be alive, and how lucky we are to be alive. At least given from my lens, the life I have. I'm sure a lot of people in the world don't feel that way, given circumstances. But I could say that for me, I just felt so grateful to be alive in that moment. I really did, and it was. I think nowadays, like most of my work has been with psilocybin for the most part, I would say. But I think ayahuasca, not ayahuasca. I think with any psychedelic, every experience reveals something different. It's I don't know if it's the same for you, but for me, there's always a new message. There's like recurring ones, but there's always something new also.
I'm gonna take what you said, because mine have been generally, like I said, just trying to peel away the layers of resistance, and I think I'm ready for a different message or a different. So I'm thanking you for reminding me the kind of the gratitude, and that view of things hasn't really been part of my experience. I think I've just been wanting to get lighter, wanting to be more present, and I think that's been part of my work. And the last psilocybin experience I had when I went to the Netherlands, my intention was really just to get lighter, just to like release the internal clamps. And I think it was a very light intention setting, and it worked. And I feel like my default setting is much more chill. It's not as nowhere near as tense. Like checking in, like what is my background ambient default setting for me today, and it's often just much lighter. And that's what I really, going back to that moment on my couch, that was my problem. And I'm grateful, and I'm proud to say that I've changed my default setting. I still have tend towards negative thoughts, and
We're human.
Yeah, right. But it doesn't go there as quickly, and I catch my brain wanting to go back to a bad habit, and my brain is such this amazing creature, this amazing machine I have in my head, but it's so terrible sometimes, and I love but it's like it wants to go back and grab onto some bad thought, and now it doesn't have much to grab on anymore, because I've done the work, and then I just like come back to this little bit more of a chill default setting. So Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah. I relate a lot to that. It's kind of like if I'm having, let's say, a bad week or negative thoughts or compulsive thoughts or whatever, like I sort of use my experience with psychedelics, not just them, but let's use that as an example. I use that as kind of like a sort of map I can go back to, and it's just like a reminder of like just kind of snapping out of it and just reminding myself the message I got in those experiences. And also I can go back to, you know, the 12 steps or whatever work I've done in that. It's like I just have tools now with psychedelics, with the 12 steps or other, you know, it's not just that, like you can be, you know, I say mindfulness, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, you know, whatever it might be, you know, it's, we sort of use tools that work for us. And I'm just amazed that, or how, I just feel so lucky that we have, or that I can access something like a psychedelic and have these experiences. I think it's just it's so incredible, and there's like so many amazing people who can facilitate these amazing experiences. Like you know, the one I had in Colombia recently, like the family who ran that place were just some of the most humble, loving people I've ever met in my life. You know, I just feel so like I said to my girlfriend, like, even if we didn't have ayahuasca ceremonies, I would have got so much out of just being there with them and also with the group I was with. Just the connections I formed with, you know, people with psychedelics, they're doing ceremonies together. Also they're similar to the connections I formed actually with people I met in rehabs, because you connect with people at a very, very deep level very quickly, because you have group therapy, at least in rehab. Group therapy, you're talking about, you know, all your deepest, darkest traumas and harms you've caused to people and your war stories, and you're detoxing together, like, you know, shitting, vomiting together, opiates or benzos, whatever it might be. Yeah, kind of tangentially similar. And, you know, ceremonies, you're puking and shitting together. It gets very intimate. And,
I mean, I guess we could like thank God for being an addict. Like you're that friend who said he was grateful for it in some way. Our difficult paths give us the opportunity to do amazing things and to learn and to grow. And to change our, how lucky you are to be in the careers we're in, and to have these conversations. So I don't know. I think we're done, but I guess we could end by, I don't know, being grateful even for our traumas.
Yeah, big and small T's.
Our rock bottoms like give us opportunities to come out.
Yeah,
and to end up here.
Well, thank you very much for. Being you and having this conversation with me. I think we can confidently say to the listeners, we've definitely got to know each other a bit more here.
And good team bonding.
And hopefully, people listening can get something out of it or relate to something. And I appreciate you facilitating this.
Yeah, no, thanks for doing this, Max.
We're going to get some nice food afterwards.
Yeah.
And celebrate.
Yeah. Thanks, Max.
Thank you.